Today, we're going to look at corruption in Iraq, but from a really different angle. What if it's not just some flaw in the system? What if corruption is the system? Let's get into it.
You've probably seen images like this for years out of Iraq. All that frustration, just boiling over into the streets, with people demanding an end to the corruption that's really hollowing out their country. But what if the problem is so much deeper than just a few bad apples?
And this quote from a report by the London School of Economics, it just hits the nail on the head. It suggests that if you really want to understand what's happening in Iraq, you can't just look at individual acts of greed. Nope, you have to look at the very architecture of the state itself. So how in the world does a system get this fundamentally corrupt? Well, it turns out the answer really boils down to one single, powerful concept that pretty much governs all of Iraqi politics. That concept is called muhasa. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Imagine the entire government is a giant cake. Instead of giving slices to the most qualified people, the cake is carved up and handed out to political parties based on how powerful they are. It's not about merit, not at all. It's about loyalty to your party.
And here's the inevitable result of that system. When a political party controls, say, an entire ministry, that ministry stops working for the public. It starts working for the party. It becomes a personal ATM, a way to make money and give jobs to loyal followers. And the craziest part? Since all the major parties are in on it, they all cover for each other. It's not just corruption. It's collaborative, protected corruption.
Okay, so if the whole system is designed this way, how can we even begin to see what's actually going on? Well, a recent project by the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP, has given us this incredible, unprecedented look inside the Iraqi justice system.
So what the UNDP did was pretty clever. They set up a trial monitoring program, basically putting their own eyes and ears inside Iraq's special anti-corruption court. And their whole mission was simple: collect cold, hard, evidence-based data on how these huge corruption cases are really being handled.
And listen, we are not talking about small-time bribes here. This program focuses on what's called grand corruption. We're talking cases with high-ranking officials, insane amounts of money, and scandals with names like the heist of the century, where something like $2.5 billion just vanished from the state's tax agency.
So, the monitors are in place, watching everything. What did they find? All right, let's open up the evidence file and take a look.
One of the very first things they looked at was pretty fundamental: a defendant's access to justice. What kind of lawyer did they have? Was it a private lawyer they hired themselves, or one that the court appointed for them? The answer tells you a lot. And when you look at the data, wow, the difference is just staggering. If a defendant had a court-appointed lawyer, the conviction rate was 76%. But if they had their own private lawyer, it drops all the way down to 41%. That is a huge gap. So the first thing you think is, are the court-appointed lawyers just not as good? Well, hold on, because the data tells a more complicated story. A big chunk of those cases with court-appointed lawyers were actually tried in absentia, which means the defendant had already skipped town and fled the country. In that situation, the court just assigns a lawyer by default. Now, it's not all bad news. There is one little glimmer of hope in the data. The number of these trials where the defendant is a no-show has been cut almost in half, dropping from 21% down to 11%. So that suggests that some of the new rules to make sure powerful people actually show up to court might be starting to work. But, and this is a really big but, right next to that positive trend is something deeply disturbing. The number of cases where defendants claim their confessions were forced, extracted through torture or abuse, that number nearly doubled. And that raises some massive human rights red flags about how evidence is even being collected in the first place.
And the monitors found that the problems go way beyond just what happens in the courtroom. They uncovered these deeper, systemic flaws baked into the justice system itself.
One of the biggest issues is just paper. The whole system is drowning in it. Case files are literally stored in physical lockers. They can get lost, it takes forever to find anything, and it makes it almost impossible for different agencies to coordinate. A modern digital system would be a total game changer, giving you instant access and so much more transparency. The data also revealed another huge blind spot: gender. Get this, out of 371 defendants in these major corruption cases, only 25 were women. Now that's not because women are less corrupt, it's because they are systematically shut out of the powerful jobs where this kind of grand corruption even happens. It's a direct reflection of that Muhasa system we talked about.
And this exclusion is totally systemic. It's rooted in a long history of discriminatory policies. You've got these outdated rules like a so-called marriage requirement for women who want to be judges, and just a ton of implicit bias that keeps women from getting those top jobs. I mean, just look at these numbers from Iraq's own Supreme Judicial Council. They really speak for themselves. You've got over 1,100 male judges and only 44 female judges. Nearly 400 prosecutors, only 75 are women. The whole system is just overwhelmingly male-dominated, and that affects everything.
So after hearing all of this, a system literally designed for corruption, a justice system with these massive flaws, you have to ask yourself, is change even possible? Let's take a look at the path forward.
The experts have laid out a pretty clear roadmap for reform. It involves big-picture legal changes, going all in on a digital e-justice system, giving real power to independent anti-corruption groups, and crucially, working with other countries to get back all the stolen money that's been stashed overseas.
But that brings us right back to square one, doesn't it? The core dilemma. The LSE report says it bluntly. Expecting the very same political elite who benefit from this corrupt system to be the ones to fix it, well, it's just not realistic. They built it, they protect it. And so that leaves us with this final, really challenging question to chew on. If corruption isn't just a crack in the wall, but the very foundation the whole house is built on, what happens to the entire structure when you try to rip that foundation out?